Welcome to NFL Daily, where we never sold all our Jameis Winston stock. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in my garage talking to my friend Nick Shook from Ohio. We're talking some screaming needs for every AFC team today. Nick, welcome back.
I'm glad to be here. I'm in an apartment. I do have some soundproofing foam on the wall, but I don't trust it much, so I'm not going to actually scream for screaming needs, but I'm excited.
Okay. You can scream. I speak very loudly. We're right behind like a restaurant employee parking lot. They can definitely hear me when I'm doing a show because, my wife Emeka, she says often she can hear me on the total other side of the house, and it's loud. I guess, I don't know what it is. You hit record and you just start yelling. But yes, it's Screaming Needs Day. So 2 of the shows this week. I'm going to do one with you. I'm going to do one with Patrick Claybon later in the week. We'll do the NFC. We're going to kind of go through all the teams, a little bit of a reset after everything that happened in free agency and look ahead to the draft, what all the needs will be. And first, we're going to do just a little bit of news. Now, we have not addressed the Aaron Rodgers visit to the Steelers on the show. Patrick and I talked draft on the show that we put up on Monday, and it was interesting. This report comes out. Rodgers is visiting. No one really had it except for a local guy, Jerry Dulac, who probably just heard it that day from someone literally in the building that's like, hey, Aaron Rodgers is here, because no one knew about it ahead of time. None of the insiders, nothing. And that to me is interesting on its own that they were trying to keep it so quiet. It's come out since that Rodgers stayed for 6 hours. PFT at least thought that this thing might be headed to a conclusion, but then, it didn't happen. They made an offer and he's just sitting on that offer and we wait. But I do think the fact that he was there and that Jameis Winston is now a member of the Giants, which we'll talk about in a second, certainly leads you to believe that the Steelers are very likely to have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback.
Yeah, I would imagine that they're back and forth, producing a meeting of such length, and there's really no interest with other teams that this feels like this is his destination. Frankly, I'm tired of it already just because Rodgers does this. He makes us all wait. But it does make me think, Greg, what was the longest job interview you ever had in your professional life?
Oh, wow. The longest job interview.
Because I have one.
Okay, give me yours while I think on it, but I'll listen to your story because I know it's going to be dynamite.
In college, I interned at the Akron Beacon Journal as a copy editor for 2.5 years. I went back there in between NFL stints to get a full-time copy editing job. My interview there was 7.5 hours with people I already knew for nearly 3 years. But I got the job, so take that, Rodgers. I was there even longer.
Yeah, that's insane. Now that I think of it, I never had long interview processes. I did that thing. Remember when you were in high school and it was like a scam that you would sell knives or whatever? like for kids that are high school, college, you would like go door to door for Cutco selling knives. I remember I went to one of those and that was a solid hour-long interview. And they were like, yeah, then we'd love to have you come back for interview 2. And I was just like, no, this is bad vibes. That is too much. The NFL interview process, I definitely had to meet a handful of people, including at the scouting combine. But I don't know. I guess I've gotten off pretty clean in terms of my job interviews. Yeah, but it's a long time. It just almost seems like, come on, Aaron Rodgers. I know you will disrespect some parts of the establishment. Would you really meet with Mike freaking Tomlin for 6 hours and not go to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I have a hard time believing that would happen. So there is an idea of maybe it's just leverage to get everything he wants in the contract. Maybe he's waiting until after the draft to make sure they don't take a first round pick. Whatever it is, we don't need to go on about it too long because at some point he will sign and then we can analyze it then. The fact that Jameis Winston signed with the Giants on the very same day this happened, to me was not a coincidence though. 2 years, $8 million. And to me, that's the Giants saying, we know that Rodgers prefers the Steelers. Let's stop waiting for Rodgers. Let's get one quarterback in place because we don't have any. And let's get who we see as the ideal quarterback to just still have all our options open. 2 years, $8 million. They have put it out there that they're still looking at Russell Wilson. They could still sign another veteran. In theory, they could still sign Aaron Rodgers, but it's more likely Jameis Winston and Russ, or Jameis Winston, and who I believe is more likely, Shedeur Sanders, or even Cam Ward if they traded up to number 1.
Yeah, and we now close the circle on our good buddy Matt Harmon of Yahoo, who tweeted way back in week 17 when Malik Neighbors was torching the Colts with Drew Lock that they were winning just enough to fall out of draft position and convince the Giants to sign Jameis Winston so that he'd pummel him with 200 targets and he'd go toward a huge season in his second year. And now it's a possible reality. Congrats, Matt, on having the foresight of that.
It's true. This draft could easily be Giants 1, Patriots 2, which I obviously would prefer. It could be Patriots 1 and Giants 4, which they'd be even in a tougher spot. But those 2 late season wins, one by the Giants and one by the Patriots, really changed the equation of everything that's happening. And I say off the top, I never gave up on my Winston stock. He has fallen into his right zone. He's not making a lot of money, I think, for what he can do, which is win a handful of games for you and be a solid backup and an agreeable presence. To me, that's worth a lot. Like, that's only worth 1/3 as much as BJ Hill. I don't know. I think it's worth more than that. BJ Hill, if you don't know, is a rotational defensive tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals who plays like 500 snaps. Like, to me, some backup quarterbacks are underrated, and it'll be interesting. If he was the week 1 starter, he would be the first black quarterback to ever start week 1 for the Giants. They've only had, I believe, 3 starts ever. Geno Smith made 1. And then he was banished, and they had to promise Eli Manning another year and a half, and they fired McAdoo because that happened. And then Tyrod got a couple starts and got a win. So we'll see.
You pay the interceptions and the pick sixes tax. I think Jameis is in this deal, and hopefully the Lord will deliver him from pick sixes in New York.
There you go. What a weird but ridiculous and kind of fun combination Russ and Jameis Winston would be, but I don't think it would be very good. I think they got to go Cam Ward. Let's talk about the fact that Cam Ward is having his pro day at Miami. As we're taping this, we don't have like big reviews on it, and Cam, pro days always go pretty well. The noteworthy part of it to me is that the Titans had dinner with him the night before, and that's kind of the pole position of like, okay, who has the highest pick? Who's getting dinner with the presumptive number 1 overall pick the night before? It's the team with the number 1 overall pick. It's the Titans. And yeah, the longer this goes on, I just think he's going number 1 overall, and we'll have to see if the Titans want to do it. I think they are going to want to do it in the end.
Yeah, and is he going to order a tomahawk steak and really just establish his dominance as the franchise quarterback of the future for them or not, or is he going to go something lighter, show he's more measured, experienced, veteran guy? Yeah, they're in the catbird seat for their pick of quarterbacks, and it feels sure like they're going to take him.
Yeah, and he's someone that all the meetings at the combine, everyone loves Cam Ward. He is a veteran. I mean, he's played a lot of football at the collegiate level, knows how to run a team, do the whole process. I think it's going to be him in the end. By the way, Xavier Restrepo, who is a mid-round receiver, had a ton of production with him at Miami, reportedly ran between 4.7, mid 4.7s and 4.8, which is a really unfortunate time for a smaller receiver. So maybe he'll try to run again at some point. It's too bad because he was productive. He'll still get a job in the league, but he might not get drafted as early as he was hoping. Just before we roll through a couple nuggets and get to all the needs we want to talk about, I just want to mention one contract thing that came up. Like, the reports are one thing with these contracts when they first come out, but then when you get to peek under the hood, they often are one thing that's a little bit different. And I noticed T. Higgins' contract, Pro Football Talk, is the one that had this, was very surprising, very year to year. He's going to get $35 million in the first year plus a roster bonus into next year. But in theory, if it went really poorly, they could really get out after 1 year. It would be 2 years for $59.5 million. And that's a lot of money. So I'm not going to say T. Higgins did the Bengals a great favor, but it's very much a year-to-year deal, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And T. Higgins could have done a lot better on the open market. I actually do think Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase decided they really wanted to play together. And I think the other two guys helped bring in T. He kind of gave them a little bit of a hometown discount. And I don't fault him for not getting every last dollar, but it's interesting. It is kind of a team-friendly deal for the Bengals.
Yeah, it is, and I think it sets up to protect the franchise, which a lot of clubs don't necessarily do this with these big types of deals, which is that, hey, if we're awful, defensively, and we clearly need to dedicate some resources to the defense, and we have to make a sacrifice. We can make a sacrifice and get out of this deal after year one. Obviously, that's not what you hope happens, but they're planning for the worst case scenario in the event that they realize this is too much money dedicated to 3 offensive guys. So good on them. But yeah, you're right. And what did we do in January? Every team in the NFL pretty much was like, we have a shot at T. Higgins. No, you don't,
right?
Because he's going to take this type of deal.
It's true. He man, I would have been really curious to see what he got, but he would have gotten more ultimately in guaranteed money. The DK Metcalf deal, by the way, is a 2-year deal. It's very simple. It's what is it for 35, I believe. Now I'm forgetting, but it's essentially a locked-in 2-year contract. And then after that, it's year to year, which makes a lot of sense. I think it's basically 2 for $60 for DK Metcalf. And they're not going to have any pain if they want to get out of it after 2 years. There's a couple little nuggets. You can comment if any of these strike your fancy, and then we'll move on to the segment. Brandon Cooks is back with the Saints. Yeah, I think he's more of a 3rd or 4th receiver at this point of his career, but where he started it all back with the Saints in 2014, ironically the same year Derek Carr was drafted, so those guys were drafted in the same draft class. Dylan Radins, by the way, an offensive lineman, signs there too from the Titans. He was a disappointment, a high draft pick for the Titans. Trent Brown is with the Texans as they continue to just collect random offensive linemen. Avonte Maddox, who's coming off that Super Bowl win, is going to the Lions. They've had some nice cheap signings, I think. Charles Omenihu, who was pretty high up in the 60s, I believe, in my top 101, is back with the Chiefs on a deal that can max out at $7 million. So that was good for them to get a key guy for them back. Tyler Conklin, who had a lot of production at tight end for the Jets the last few years, is going to the Chargers, and the Titans signed Joey Sly. What catches your fancy there?
I love the addition of Conklin to that tight end room with the Chargers. That was, as we were going through these needs and I was prepping for this, I was thinking tight end, then I saw, that he was on that depth chart, and I was like, oh, okay, that's good. That's a nice little balance for that offense, and especially an offense that has needed guys to catch the ball outside of Ladd McConkey. But Brandon Cooks, complete the career circle there. Go back to the place where it all started. He was only there for a couple of years before they moved on from him. He's the guy who gets traded throughout his entire career. This is the first time he signed a free agent deal in his career, and he's already been in the league for more than 10 years, which is crazy to consider, but he's always had value on the trade market. Now he gets to go back to where he began, to a team that has learned the value of receiver depth by dealing with injuries over the last few years. So it's a nice little pickup for them. Don't expect a lot of production from him. He's a guy who, with the Cowboys, last couple of years, he'd catch a touchdown pass randomly and be like, oh yeah, he is still in this receiving corps. So he'll probably get more looks there, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he has the juice anymore. I'd love to be proven wrong, because he's been a fun player to watch over the years, although
he pops up sometimes.
I always remember his Super Bowl performance for the Patriots, where, man, he just got to make a man miss in the red zone, in the low red zone, and might have a touchdown there, and who knows. Let's move on to our segment. So how I presented it to you, Shook, are screaming needs for AFC teams after the free agency period, entering true draft prep. We're now only a month away from the draft. What are the biggest needs for these teams? Because anything that's happening in free agency now is just kind of picking at the back of the roster. So we're going to go back and forth. We'll start in the AFC East. We're going to put a clock on this to just make sure we get it nice and tidy. And we'll go 2 minutes max. If we don't need 2 minutes, we won't use it all. But let's put Shook on the clock. He can start out with the New York Jets.
All right, so if you look at this group, I actually love this roster and what they've done in the offseason. A lot of low-level signings where you're like, okay, I like that. Even the current quarterback situation with Justin Fields and Tyron on that team, I like it. But where they need some depth is at linebacker. They went and got Jamin Davis in an acquisition, and I'm like, okay, low risk, potentially high production. He didn't pan out, with Washington, and I've always loved him coming out of college, but they need depth. If you look at their depth chart as it stands right now, Zaire Barnes is listed there. He played 32 special team snaps last season. That's not enough for a guy who may be in your starting lineup. Go add a linebacker, maybe add 2, fill out the roster. I know it's not a position of priority like it used to be because all these teams run sub packages, but I need at least one more quality body in there.
Yeah, and they are a team, I think, with Aaron Glenn that are going to lean, if you look at what they did in Detroit, on the linebacker position more than most. Because, look, they spent a lot of money to bring back Jamie and Sherwood, and you have Quincy Williams still there. So you have 2 guys. It is interesting. Like now, the third linebacker is a luxury, but I think for a team like the Lions, you're absolutely right. Like the Jets, they'll want more. I think they still need an edge. They have some talent there. They have Will McDonald, and they never really got. Jermaine Johnson is a solid player, but do they have like a real pass rusher there? I'm not sure Will McDonald is a number one pass rusher. So to me, that's where I would look.
Yeah, I agree. I agree there too. They could use some help in that front seven in general, and but I do like what they look like. Starting 11 on both sides of the ball for the most part.
It's not bad. I think if they drafted Membu at number 7 overall, you could slide him right into right tackle. That's certainly an open spot. I don't know if you put Max Mitchell there. Receiver could use some help, but overall, I agree. They're a team that like their lineup looks better than most. Let's go to another one, kind of like that. Let's put me on the clock for the Bills. No huge needs, Eric. No huge needs for this team. Like, to me, this is one of the best rosters in the NFL. Now, I think what they need is guys with higher ceilings. It is a roster full of pretty good players, other than Josh Allen. Like, it's just a roster full of, like, B pluses. 1 to like 22 if you're looking at the starting lineup. Probably the number one thing I would look at is probably in the secondary. Dane Jackson, who you brought back, like he's a cornerback, probably your third cornerback. Your safety, you drafted Cole Bishop there last year. You brought back DeMar Hamlin, but I think they're in the perfect spot, Shook, where they really should be best player available. And to me, they should be specifically, can we take some swings? Can we stop trying to just get like singles and doubles and I don't know, go for a home run? Because there's almost no position they couldn't use a little talent infusion. But then again, they almost have no needs that are big except for maybe the secondary.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I tried to pair them with the best free agent fits remaining available with a cornerback. I said send Rasul Douglas back there, but then I looked at his performance last year, and I think it was below what they expected, but they traded away Kyer Elam, so they have some needs in the secondary. I don't know if that big swing is theirs. It's not a cornerback class that's very strong in the draft. There's really not that much talent out there available, and I don't know if even like a Stephon Gilmore or somebody like that would really be all that interested in going there. Somebody of that caliber. So again, I'm going to sound like I did with the Jets. I need some more depth at linebacker again, because if you lose Terrell Bernard, you're looking pretty thin right there without him. And we know what that looks like in the past. So I'm all about depth at this point in the cycle. And I think they could use it there, but I think it's secondary as well.
Yeah, never tempt Sean McDermott for taking another linebacker or taking another guy in the secondary. It's kind of what he does. Under the radar, Matt Milano took a huge pay cut to come back, which is kind of shocking to me. They were ready to cut Matt Milano. When a guy takes a pay cut like that, the team is ready to cut him, which... Ooh, I like that horn. That's aggressive. All right, you're up next. Who do you got? The Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. Again, we're gonna, like I said, at this point in the process, I'm looking at depth, and with them, it's on the defensive front. I'm not worried about edge rusher as much as some other people might be, even though you dealt with an injury to Jalen Phillips in each of the last 2 years because you got Chop Robinson last year. If you look at the depth of their depth chart, though, they lack bodies there, so you're gonna need some guys in the front four. But again, I am really gonna dig down along that and say, look, Zach Sealer's good. Phillips. Yes. He should be back healthy, hopefully. And you had Robinson, like I said. You also have Bradley Chubb, who's dealt with his own injuries. But you lack name brand power up front. I need somebody else up there. Most importantly, they just need to stay healthy, which is true for every team. But I think about this, the way this team is constructed, that defense did not live up to what we thought they would be last year. So add some quality bodies there. You can find some in the draft, especially on the defensive interior, but you need more.
You're absolutely right. I wrote that down too, that they have Sealer, and we're not talking the edge positions, but they're a team that likes to play 2-3, big guys up front, and it's like it's Benito Jones, and they don't really have one. And then the other one I would throw in there, and this is going to be a theme. Every team needs cornerbacks. It's just every team needs offensive linemen, and certainly the Dolphins could use more, although they are kind of prepared at least to start the group that they have right now, but they could use some interior guys. But every team needs a cornerback. Like every team has 2 cornerbacks, but not 3. And I guess the Dolphins feel good about Jalen Ramsey. They feel good about Kader Kohu as a nickel back, but they don't really have a third. So, every team.
Well, they were very high on Storm Duck in the preseason last year.
That's fair. Storm Duck is there.
They're really good at pulling guys that you don't know about and turning them into productive players, but it's about the total picture. And I totally agree with you. I think they lack another guy over there.
All right, let's go to the Patriots, put 2 minutes on the clock. They're the opposite of the Bills. So I say the Bills can go anywhere because they don't really need like anything. And the Patriots can go anywhere because they really need everything. Even cornerback, where there's a good idea from our friend Daniel Jeremiah that if Travis Hunter went there, he'd play receiver because receiver might be their absolute biggest need, and you have these two great cornerbacks. Now, that's true, but if you look at their depth chart, you know how many cornerbacks they have? Two great ones, and then Marcus Jones is number 3, who's like barely bigger than me, and they don't have anyone else that can probably play at the NFL level. So it's like, yeah, you still need more cornerbacks than that. You need more. They need a left tackle. They need a center. They signed Garrett Bradbury. That is not a solution. A guy that Minnesota was excited to get rid of. Maybe he starts this year. Maybe he doesn't. He could play guard too. They need a tight end. Like they could take anything, and you'll say, okay, they have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Like that's not a long-term plan. So what don't the Patriots need? They kind of need everything, but left tackle is the one that screams out because Morgan Moses was signed in free agency. You figure he's on the right side. But who knows? You could even ask him to play left tackle and switch it around if you took Membu. Who knows?
If you need him to, but he also hasn't been able to stay very healthy over the last few years. He's a veteran guy. Collect offensive linemen. Please do, because you need to protect Drake May. I very much agree with that. And, when I did the fits last week, Cam Robinson was still out there. I'm like, go to the Patriots, please. He signs with the Texans, so that option's off the board. I think that they could definitely use, they've done a good job because they were starting with the bottom of the barrel. They've done a good job of filling out that 11 on both sides of the ball, but another team that really lacks depth that could become a really big problem very quickly for them if they don't get through the early portion of the season largely healthy.
Yeah, interior offensive lineman, because you look at who's there, and you have Michael Onwenu, like in theory, one of your best players, has a huge contract. He was bad last year. He got dragged down with everyone else. Cole Strange, like he was coming off a massive injury. He's a mystery. Let's go to the AFC North. You can kick us off with your Cleveland Brownies.
Well, the obvious one is quarterback. I just did an appearance on their show earlier today, and we talked about quarterback at length, and who knows how they're going to solve that. I think multiple pieces are necessary. I think you should still explore a Cousins
Tyler
option.
Shuck, bro. Ride the wave. Get excited.
I'm not going to ride a wave that everybody likes to ride because those waves end up being Jake Locker, okay? But in the meantime, I also think you need running back. This is a running back room that has zero identity right now. Nick Chubb is not who he used to be. He's a free agent right now. They want to bring him back. The Browns fans want him back. I don't know if the Browns do. And he's not an answer. You got Jerome Ford. You were throwing in Pierre Strong the last 2 years, who was just a vertical runner at best. You need somebody like that, and this is the class to do it in. So go draft a running back. Draft a quarterback. You can draft in a number of areas, but those two have to be part of your offense, especially if you're going to go back to the Kevin Stefanski identity of building out of the run.
Do you think Andrew Berry is overrated, properly rated, not get enough heat? Because when I looked at this roster, man,
1 minute.
They've been there for 5 years now. Like, I know the Watson excuse is you could blame that on ownership, but the rest of the rosters, it's not great. I mean, especially on offense.
It's like just a boat out there just kind of floating. Like they found a direction briefly and then they decided to change course, and then that went to just hell in a handbasket. Now you're just like, I don't know what to do. This is just a team that's just existing out there. Yeah, I think it depends on what he's rated. What is he rated? Because I would say that he probably should be below what he's rated right now. It just depends on who you ask.
I feel like he's under the radar and maybe doesn't get a lot of heat. I don't know, because if it's the analytics, what is it? But he should be rated as poorly as any GM just about out there.
What it is it's a fan base that has seen so much turnover over the years that they just like the stability. They know that they can count on Stefanski and Berry at least now. But if they win 3 games again next year, neither of those guys are going to be there anymore.
Their left tackle is DeJuan Jones right now. Their number 1 receiver is Jerry Jeudy, and they don't really have a 2. They need some interior lineup. It's a lot. All right, I'm going to do the Ravens.
He's bad at drafting receivers. I'll say that. He's very bad at drafting receivers.
Yeah, they've taken a ton. Elijah Moore is still a free agent. Just interesting. Ravens. Yeah. Put him on the clock. I just think I kept this one simple. They just need interior offensive line play. They've been okay at developing these random guys, but right now it's Falele, the huge guard that played all of last year, that I don't know if you can keep doing that. Ben Cleveland, they brought back Andrew Voorhees. Like, they need offensive line help. I think this could become a problem for them. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry make them look better than I think they really are.
And so does Tyler Linderbaum, the center. He's kind of propping up the rest of the interior offensive line right now. I give them credit. They have figured out tackle after kind of, wandering out there for a little bit, getting that Ronnie Stanley to come back on the deal that he did, and Rosengarten, the draft pick. He was also very solid for them. But, it's been the same story for them every offseason from my perspective. And it's just, you need cornerback depth. Like 2 years ago, they got absolutely ravaged by injury, and they just threw a bunch of guys at it. Then they let a bunch of guys walk, or they cut them in the offseason. When I look at them on paper again, I'm like, yeah, okay. Marlon Humphrey, cool. Jalen Armour-Davis, all right. Nate Wiggins was a good pickup. Who else?
Maybe.
Who else?
Like maybe. Nate Wiggins is a great example. There is something about me that just likes watching NFL tape better than college tape. It's just a fact. So when I'm starting to watch these cornerbacks and stuff, part of me thinks wouldn't my time be better spent watching Nate Wiggins' rookie year and just seeing how that went? Because I'm not really sure. Is that a good pick? He was up and down. I would like to see how it went on a deeper level. Smaller guy, was feisty, but I agree that would be their number 2 need, would be cornerback.
He was a splash play guy, and I agree. I was a little concerned about his lack of size coming out of college because he put down that great 40 time. He got hurt early, came back. I think the jury's out on him, but that's at least a guy that you can be excited about as opposed to some of the other guys in that secondary.
If you don't embarrass yourself as a rookie cornerback, that's a plus. It's kind of like being an NBA rookie. Just don't be terrible, and that's usually a great sign. By the way, we hadn't mentioned on the show, Michael Pierce, their great nose tackle, for a long time retired this offseason. Yeah. So that was a loss.
He got a pick in a game, and he's like, I'm taking a knee and I'm leaving. I'm done.
You're up next with the Bengals.
All right, Cincinnati Bengals. We know you just spent a lot of money on your receivers. You've got a lot of money in your quarterback. You got Trey Hendrickson still out there searching for a deal, maybe coming back. But here's the thing. If you look at him and he's on the team, that's great. You got one. You need another. Miles Murphy, former first-round pick, has not produced, has not lived up to the expectation at all. Frankly, didn't really get a lot of opportunities, stuck behind Sam Hubbard, so this is a prove-it year for him. And if you lose Trey Hendrickson in a trade, then you got 2 questions at the position. It's a defense that was much maligned early in the season. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. They deserved the criticism. And now with all that money dedicated to the offensive side, you're going to be under a microscope from day one. So go add to your pass rush, take a little bit of pressure off of the secondary. It's the best way you can go about trying to make this into a more well-rounded team. And I think it starts on the defensive line and edge rusher for them. So that's where they need to look.
It's a great call. Miles Murphy, first-round pick from a couple years ago, has not shown much. I think they would have hoped, because Hubbard was playing so poorly last year. I think if Murphy couldn't get on the field, that wasn't a great sign. But you never know. Sometimes defensive linemen develop a little slower. They brought back Joseph Asai. The fact that they gave him a decent amount of money shows me they're going to play him. But you're right, man. They need dudes up front. And that actually points out what I thought when I looked at the Bengals defense. I was like, wait, this defense, which everyone dogged, has all 11 starters coming back.
That's not entirely encouraging.
I mean, not Sam Hubbard. I guess it's not all 11 starters, but their entire starting lineup this year was on the team last year. Almost all of them were starting. There's a couple that are maybe getting elevated. Like Jermaine Pratt's still on this team. Logan Wilson. It's all the same group. The secondary's the same too. We're just running it back with this Bengals team.
Yeah. You swung on DJ Turner a couple of years ago and that never panned out. Just because you have continuity doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to work out at all because you just changed defensive coordinators.
They really are blaming it all on Sweet Lou Anaru. Not nice. Let's go Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, it's obviously quarterback, but it's also wide receiver if they trade George Pickens. DJ threw this out on 40s and free agents a couple weeks ago. I believe, I'm losing track of time, that he doesn't think Pickens is going to be on this roster in the end, that he might get traded during the draft. And that's really stuck in my head because he's in the final year of his contract. And if they trade Pickens, they need more help at receiver. But I also get why they would trade Pickens, get another draft pick. He's not a long-term, and he's duplicative of DK Metcalf. And so I would get if that happens. But it's really the skill positions to me. Like every team, they needed a cornerback, like a third cornerback. They could use another one, but they brought in Darius Slay. But it's the skill positions. It's quarterback. It could be a total embarrassment if they don't get Aaron Rodgers. It might be an embarrassment if they do. And then it's wide receiver and running back. I like Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell fine, but you would like one more guy there.
Yeah, the idea of trading Pickens now actually makes a lot of sense because you're capitalizing on maximum value as it stands right now, because you could get to the end of the next season and he doesn't have nearly as much value and he walks, right? But I am also looking at them from a right now standpoint. And right now, like Roman Wilson, who I loved as a pick, did nothing last year, got hurt in camp and never really found his way onto the field. That would be a big boon for them if he could play. He's not the same type of guy, but that would be a big help for them in that passing game. For me, though, if you don't know what your quarterback situation is, running back. Najee Harris is gone. Jalen Warren's your number one. They signed Kenneth Gainwell. That's great. But like the days of Cordero Patterson lining up in the backfield and taking handoffs have to be over. I hate to say it, but he's old. Like, let's get another option. This is the draft class to do it. So I'm looking again at the skill position, but I'm looking a little bit different. We're going to go running back.
Pretty good roster. As I went through these teams, there were certain teams I thought a little higher of, certain teams I thought a little lower of. I looked at the Steelers again, and I was like, man, if they did just have a quarterback, it's a pretty good roster. I actually think their offensive line has some potential. All right, that's 2 divisions down. We have 2 divisions to go. These are screaming needs for the entire AFC. We will be back in just a second. Back on NFL Daily. Every show, Nick adds exactly one more thing on the wall behind him, but you can't really tell what they are. But he's working on it. He's moving into a new place, and he's working on it.
For those of you watching on YouTube, here's what it looks like.
Look at that! He can make the camera move without even touching it. That's fancy. Yeah, a little NFL.com love. Shook.
My little sister painted that when she was like 12. She's 21 now.
That is incredible. Yeah, Shook joined us at NFL.com. I was probably 2 or 3 years deep at that point. I hired Shook, what was it, 2014, 2015?
2014, yeah. And the question that always sticks with me is, when can you start? Gregg asked, and I said, as fast as I can drive across the country. And here we are, doing it remotely from across the country.
yeah. You did come though. I missed the LA Shook era because Shook, he was a younger Shook. He was mixing it up a little bit. How long was the interview, and what do you remember from our interview?
It was Mike Coppinger asking me, what do you know about the job? And I said, which job are we talking about? Because I applied for like 7, and then it was a call with you, and then I think it was in the bag, and I was packed up and driving.
Well, what was the call? I'm asking, do you remember what was the call like? I have a feeling I remember how it probably went.
God, I honestly don't remember because I was just ecstatic about getting the job and ready to go. Something along the line. You were just like kind of covering the remaining bases. I don't know. It was pretty easy. It was pretty simple. It was quick.
My job interview style was always a vibe check. Keisha and I have talked about this before. I've talked about some other people I interviewed. I would very rarely ask meaningful questions. I would just kind of just be like, is this person like normal?
Cool?
Is this person cool? Are they going to be able to hang out? Just ask like a few questions and try to get a little bit of a vibe check. But I would not take long because I felt awkward doing interviews. So generally, I feel like they were probably max 15 minutes on the phone. It was I didn't like. It was a rare time where I didn't talk too much. I only talk too much when we're talking ball. All right, let's get back to the 16 teams we have left in the AFC. We're doing big needs for every team. And let's go to the AFC South, the forgotten division. And it should not be forgotten because the Houston Texans, put 2 minutes on the clock there, Eric. The Houston Texans are a sleeping giant. The team that everyone expected to make the leap last year, which still ended up having, a good enough season in the scheme of things. Man, you look at the bones of this team, and it's pretty good. Like, I think they could end up being the team everyone expected a year later. Now, the offensive line is obviously where everyone is going to point to for screaming needs. Interior offensive line is their number one need. I keep saying that for teams. Right now, they have a couple picks that they've taken. Titus Howard. They have Juice Struggs, who was a second-round pick a couple years ago. And then it's hilarious who they've added on their offensive line. Just a bunch of guys. Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, who was with the Seahawks last, but has started like for 6 straight years. Cam Robinson, who's always playing. Ed Ingram, who was a disappointment at guard in Minnesota. And Trent Brown, who's bounced around, was with the Bengals last, is now there at tackle. So it's just like a ton of guys
1 minute.
that haven't played well recently. And they're just hoping the coaching can fix it. And I guess that's their big need. And yet somehow I believe, because I really think the rest of the roster is quite good. Do you agree?
The cynic in me says this is what we said last year. This is the team that was going to make the leap and be so good. And yet their offensive line undercut the entire operation. It just at the knees, down. And they still won a playoff game, but they finished exactly where they did the year before. And it felt like a bit of a wasted season. But you change offensive coordinator, you change the way you approach the offense, and you get a little bit better on the offensive line, and suddenly they could get much closer to reaching their potential. So I agree, and I agree with the need as well. It's interior offensive line. You talk about collecting linemen, keep collecting. This is the draft to do it in. There's a ton of talent on the interior offensive line. Go get 2. Why not? Give yourself just a massive group of linemen and see who's best. Battle royale for every position. The last man standing is the one who gets the starting job.
The argument against why not, and it's not a great one, is that Caserio has been terrible drafting offensive linemen. Juice Struggs, second-round pick. Blake Fisher, second-round pick, did not look good. They just traded a first-round pick, Kenyon Green. But I really think, and I know we're going over on the Texans, I don't care. Seth Payne, I keep mentioning, both Jordan Rodriguez and I are Seth heads. And he thought
that's a dangerous nickname.
What happened last year with that offensive line was a fireable offense for everyone. So that them getting rid of Tunsil, getting rid of the offense, everyone that associated that was so bad that I actually do believe with the right coaching and just some journeyman players, you could maybe improve to 20th. That's how bad it was. I'm not worried about losing Laramie Tunsil. I think it somehow made sense with the picks that they got back. Shook, you're up next. Go Colts.
Let's go Colts. Indianapolis Colts. We obviously know the questions that exist at quarterback, but well, they had a defense last year that got its defensive coordinator fired. And yes, they were inconsistent on offense because of what they dealt with at quarterback. But if you can round out this team and keep games close, you can figure out whoever it is under center. And then you can go win games because you don't have to put up a ton of points. So we're going to go on the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to go for, again, sounding like a broken record at this point, linebacker depth. Because if you look at this depth chart, they could use more at the position. And most importantly, beyond the fact that, yes, you have Zaire Franklin, but the names that are there do not excite me beyond them. I need better options there as well. But it really comes down to Lou Anarumo as the coordinator there. I need him to pull out that magic wand that had everybody with a twinkle in their eye a couple of years ago about how he could get a head coaching job. I need him to go reclaim and save his reputation and turn this defense back into what it was a few years ago and make it a competitive unit.
Shout out to Our Lads, the best site for depth charts, for officially going to just 2 linebackers for most of these teams. I'm not going to say I influenced that, but we have gone in that direction with the projected starter series over the last few years. So they're listing the 5 in the DB's room. And you're right, they have 1 linebacker right now. It's Zaire Franklin. Unless they know something about last year's 5th-round pick, Jalen Carlos, then that I don't know, Carlisle's, who knows. They need a lot, though. I agree. I wrote down linebacker. They could use another cornerback, even though they brought in Charvarius Ward. But a lot of people are projecting tight end to them in the first round. That would be an interesting way to get a weapon. And they are a team that likes tight ends, and I could see that. I could see them going tight end. I could see them going tackle, like right tackle. They're not really sure what they're getting with Braden Smith at this point. They could use a guard. Like, they could use a lot. It's not a great roster.
Yeah, I agree. I think the offensive line's taken a few steps back over the last few years. Then they let a few guys leave in free agency as well. So that's definitely an area of concern where I think they could address it.
So the Jaguars are up next, and I got into a very mild disagreement with one of my favorite local voices in the game, Mike Dempsey from Jacksonville. I believe he's with 1010XL. And even before free agency, I was like, the Jaguars are so weird because I actually don't think they have many needs. Like, I don't know if they're a great team, but they just don't have like huge roster holes. They're kind of like the very poor man's Bills, where the Bills are very good at a lot of positions, but not great. And the Jaguars are very average at like every position, but they're not terrible at almost any. So I almost thought like a third edge was the thing they needed the most, because Trayvon Walker maybe isn't going to be there for forever, and they just don't have anyone there. They could use another outside cornerback. I really believe if you go through all these rosters, except maybe Houston, like every team I could say cornerback. But my hot take is that the Jaguars are so vanilla, they don't have screaming needs. They're just very very ordinary. They're better than their record was a year ago. They're much more 8 and 9 to me. and they're just very ordinary.
Yeah, I actually agree with that because I had the same struggle of trying to figure it out, other than doing the numbers at linebacker again, because they have 4 total linebackers on the roster. And even if you went with 2 positions, there's just not a lot of guys. I will say I do like their top 3 with Foye Oluokun, Devin Lloyd, and Chad Muma. That's a better group than some other teams. But yeah, I agree. And even if you look at the receiving core, you love Brian Thomas Jr. Parker Washington randomly steps up in key spots sometimes. They still have Gabe Davis. And they get De'Ami Brown in the offseason. They could use, I wouldn't even necessarily say they need a receiver, but you're right. They're so vanilla. They could take additions anywhere without having any screaming needs. You know what they need? They need their quarterback to play a full season and show a step forward in Trevor Lawrence. That's what they need.
Now, the thing I was mentioning with the Bills, that was like, man, you need some real difference makers. The Jaguars need more above average players. Yeah. So I keep saying they're average so they don't have needs, but that also means you have needs almost everywhere except your starting edges. Like defensive tackle could still be upgraded significantly. Wide receiver could too. Like running back, you're set there, I think, this season at least. But your tackles, like there's almost nothing that you couldn't try to improve. So the board is open for you, James Gladstone. All right, let's finish up the AFC South with Titans.
All right, they need a plan at quarterback. Is it Cam Ward? Is it Will Levis getting some sort of camp competition, or at least being on the roster and intriguing enough people for them to remember that he exists? Like, you need a plan. I just need a plan under center. And if you're going to draft Cam Ward, don't throw him into a disaster scenario that derails his career, because that would be the worst possible outcome for a club that needs stability at the position. Otherwise, like we had some mocks earlier in the offseason where folks were like, Abdul Carter could go there. I like their defensive front. I really do. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is a monster. Tavondre Sweat's a stud. You could take some improvements in interior linebacker. They've had a lot of guys come in and out of there in recent years. But I'm not worried about the departure of Harold Landry. That's not a big deal for me. I just think that they should have been a better team than they were last year. They just self-sabotaged so much offensively that they lost a lot of close games. If you improve that, then you're in a much better spot.
And yet they're another team that, like, I didn't feel better about them after going through this exercise. I mean, any team's going to look better with Cam Ward on the team. And he was doing his pro day as we're taping this, and there's some great videos of him throwing on the move, and you could actually see Mike Borgonzi, the Titans GM, kind of reacting to some of them. I mean, he's too good to pass on, but they've fixed, in their minds, the offensive line in front of him. I think that's the way they would try to support him. But you also need some weapons, and they don't really have enough. So they need wide receivers too. And their defense it's fine. You're hoping for a turnaround at cornerback with L'Jarius Sneed, but they need off-ball linebackers. That's another one. They need edges. Like, they need a lot. It's not a great team.
And they're not a team that has made smart decisions at receiver to begin with. Like, they went and got Ridley, and he was like a non-factor for half the season. Traylon Burks is still on the roster, and he's never going to be what they thought he was. And then your third is Van Jefferson. Like, it's not exciting. Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I thought was my favorite receiver on that team last year, is now somewhere else. So, yeah, the weapons, they need to improve them.
I mean, it's like, yeah, I think they were with the Patriots as the 2 least talented teams in the NFL last year. But the difference is the Patriots have Drake May. So the Titans answer by getting your Drake May in Cam Ward and hope for the best. We'll see. Let's start the AFC West. I will go with the Broncos. I would say, other than the Raiders, all the AFC West look better on paper to me than I expected. So the Broncos are included in that. I think they just need to juice up the offense. Wide receiver after Cortland Sutton. They have a handful of guys that would make sense as role players on a playoff team, with Marvin Mims and Vele, who played last year and was pretty good as a rookie, but they don't have difference makers. So whether it's a tight end to go over the top of Evan Ingram, that seems a little weird to me, or it's a wide receiver, or it's a running back. Like, they need weapons with Bo Nix. That's where I think they start.
I thought I was going to get some Devon Vele slander in here, and I was going to be very upset.
No, he's good, but like, is he your 2 moving forward? I don't know.
No, he's a 3. He's a concrete 3, and a pretty good 3. The answer is running back, Greg. They have no running game. They had no running game last year. Javonte Williams was a non-factor for them. Jaleel McLaughlin ends up getting more of the looks than him anyway. Audric Estime is a classic throwback power back, and he's somebody you play on the goal line in short yardage situations, but that's not the answer. This is the draft class, again, to go get running backs. And it kind of reminded me of the Buccaneers last year. They were like 32nd in the league in rushing yards per game. I think it was 89.8 or something like that going into last year. They get Bucky Irving, a guy who flew under a lot of radars, not mine, but a lot of radars. He ends up having a great rookie season. I could see something similar happening with this team. And if you balance that out Bo Nix becomes that much more effective on the rollout, and we already know he's really good out in space. So I think this could be the key that unlocks that offense, and suddenly we're paying a lot more attention to them even than we were last year.
Yeah, right tackle is a sneaky other potential need. McGlinchey was better for them last year, but that's not a long-term solution. Sean Payton loves to invest in offensive lines. And for the most part, they already have there, and they're already good. But right tackle long-term. But yeah, I think
it's not a screaming need. That's a whispering need.
It's true. I kind of forgot the point of the segment. Just go with the screaming needs. I don't even think they love Cortland Sutton as a 1, but that's just my own vibe. All right, you're up next. Let's go with the AFC champions, the Chiefs.
All right. This one's probably the most obvious that we have out there. Well, maybe not the most obvious, but one of them. They need better offensive line play, and they've had a lot of changes in the offensive line, and frankly, I don't feel very good about all of them, or really any of them. Joe Thuney's gone. Kingsley Suamataia is there and was not a good left tackle. They went and swung on Jalen Moore, who doesn't even have a large enough sample size as a starter to really be worth the money that he got, which he didn't get a ton. He got 15 a year. I'm just very concerned about the left side of this line. There is only a certain amount of coaching that can be, impact or, impressed upon an offensive line that breeds significant change, and I'm just not seeing it in this personnel right now. So that is their number one need. They need to shore up left tackle and the rest of that group and let them compete, because we learned that lesson the hard way in the Super Bowl. And if they want to continue to be that team, they got to protect Patrick Mahomes better than they did.
I think they tried. This is their plan.
It wasn't enough. They had a guard playing tackle in the freaking Super Bowl.
I hear you. And now they're going to have last year's pick at tackle, Suamataia, probably playing left guard. So, yeah, they'll dip into this interior line class without a question. I don't think they will tackle
He's too slow to move. So I agree. They're going to do interior line. They have to.
They were a team that, going through this again, I was like, you know what? This is actually a pretty good roster. Of course it is. But it's not just Patrick Mahomes. I don't think they have a ton of screaming needs. I think they might want to look ahead at running back. Pacheco's getting to the end of his contract and wasn't great last year. I think they could use someone next to Chris Jones, on the other side of Karlaftis. But these aren't screaming. They're just kind of whispering. They lost the safety in Justin Reed. It's a pretty good team. It's a lot of players who have played and won a lot of big time games. They actually have pretty good continuity. I think they're in fine shape. I'm not going to be panicking about the Chiefs.
I'm just worried about their offensive line, but you know me.
Last week I was panicking about them, but now I'm no longer panicking. All right, the Raiders were one of the teams in this exercise. Put 2 minutes on the clock. Oh, we got in right under the gun. They were one of the teams in this exercise that I feel worse about, because you could make the argument that Geno plus Carroll plus vibes equals a much improved team, and I would buy that argument in terms of they win 7 or 8 games just off the vibes, but they've actually gotten worse on defense this year. At linebacker, it's a Landon Roberts and not much else. They lost some good players in the secondary, but I actually my screaming need is wide receiver. Your number 1 is Jacoby Myers on the last year of his contract, and your number 2 is Trey Tucker. And I know Brock Bowers is your number 1. I don't care. You still have no long-term wide receivers on the roster. Myers was being mentioned in potential trade talks. That wouldn't even shock me if that happened during the draft. So wide receiver is my screaming need.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to free agency fits that I ran last week, I got lit up online for this a little bit, and I understand why. But what's the one thing you want to give Geno in a new place? You want to give him a veteran receiver he can trust to get open and run the routes and establish a quick rapport with. And Keenan Allen's out there, and they last year in the second half of the season had some of the smallest pass catchers outside of Brock Bowers that I've seen in a long time. Jacoby Myers and Keenan Allen would now be giving you 2 guys 6'2" or taller. So let's go with that. I know Vegas isn't the place he wants to end his career, spend the twilight of his career, but at least he can go there knowing I'm going to go play for Pete Carroll and I'm going to go catch passes for Geno Smith. So it could be worse than what I'm faced with right now. I like that idea. It doesn't have to be Keenan Allen, but it's got to be talent at receiver. And oh, by the way, have you looked at their running back room? Because I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure Raheem Mostert turned into a bit of a goal line merchant last year, and that is not a bell cow back in that backfield.
I hate that they need a running back going into the draft. It's a great draft for it, but they have to get a starter. That's going to take up one of their picks. I wonder, when you get grief online from people, do you ever just think to yourself, how big are these people? Who are they
actually,
to be
what I love
Nick
about this show is I'm not a comment reader, but every once in a while I've caught one. And then somebody immediately jumps to my defense and is like, do you know how big this guy is? I'm like, all right, cool. I didn't have to say it.
Let's wrap it up with our final team. My hometown. This is my hometown now. I feel like it should be your hometown once you've lived there for like 13 straight years.
It's my second home.
2 years. That could be another way to do it. Los Angeles Chargers. Let's go.
All right. Well, I hate to say it and sound it again, but defensive line depth is a need. Morgan Fox is no longer there. Poona Ford is no longer there.
He gone.
We got some needs on that defensive front, folks. And if you're going to continue to be the gritty, tough, physical Chargers of the Jim Harbaugh era, you're going to need a little bit more up front. Like Scott Matlock, who is one of my favorite guys who like moonlights as a fullback, is also listed as a defensive end in their starting lineup right now. I need more bodies up there. I'm fine with the rest of their defense. There are some needs back there. The way that their secondary is shaken out over the last few years is not super inspiring. Obviously, we know they like Deion Henley at linebacker. It starts at the front, though, for me. Defensively, they got to get better there, and then kind of let the offense figure itself out.
Yeah, I agree. They made so many players look better than they had been previously last year, but you can't count on that. They've had a quieter offseason than I expected. Ton of salary cap space, like way too much.
1 minute.
But they are kind of resembling what the Ravens do. Joe Ortiz comes from the Ravens, their general manager. They look like they're playing the compensatory pick game. Like they want to get some compensatory picks. Because you look at who they've signed, it's not a lot of hugely productive players. Mekhi Becton last year, Tyler Conklin, Najee Harris, like these kind of B level. They've been looking for values, and they need some young defensive players that they can build around that are their guys. They found a couple cornerbacks in the mid to late rounds last year. That's about it that are really like Harbaugh guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're going to continue to be this defense under Jesse Minter, you're just going to need more NFL talent. I'm not necessarily saying we're aiming for blue chip guys because there's only so many of those in a draft, but that their identity last year was playing solid defense and being a tough team, and you got to be better on paper in order to continue being that team. So hopefully they end up doing exactly what you just said, and they make their money in the draft and go from there. But right now, incomplete picture.
Incomplete picture, but they've earned the benefit of the doubt. So have you, Shook. Look, when you got drafted to NFL.com way back in 2014, one of the best value pickups this company has ever had. Appreciate you, man.
Oh, God. I don't know if kinder words have ever been said about me. I thank you, as always, for the opportunity 10, 11 years ago and right now.
We got to get you back out here. Well, let's talk off the show about that.
Yeah.
Bring Shook back to LA. We will be back our next show with Jordan Rodriguez and Colleen Wolfe. Very excited about this one. And yes, when Shook and I are going down memory lane, remembering 2015 was 10 years ago, football is back.